And then finally to sharks, and sharks are a little bit more of a poser, I think, than the others, in that, particularly in the last decade, there's been a huge explosion of shark photography. And it's perhaps a little bit more challenging than it was. I'm just running through a series of great whites, the bull shark, there's a tiger shark, great hammerhead, oceanic white tip, that's a whale shark, basking shark, lemon shark, and I'm trying to the end of these. Reef shark, Caribbean reef shark, and raggy or grey nurse, Australia. But I have to say that there's no shortage of really great shark shots these days. So I think we have to, perhaps with sharks, challenge ourselves a little bit more. I certainly think there's a lot more shark shots going around than most of the others. And I think it's important to give ourselves a little bit more challenge and try and take these pictures on just a little bit more than just being, nice standard portraits. It's important to take those shots. But I think the shots in our portfolio that we really want to push to the front should offer something more, whether it's just a nice portrait with some particularly nice light in the frame, or maybe just simple things like looking for other ways of framing. Obviously sharks are all long and thin. There's very few vertical pictures of sharks out there. So just simple things like this can create, this is oceanic white tip just shot in a vertical picture, can create just something slightly different. And also sharks obviously being recognisable subjects, we can be a little bit freer with the way we show them. Just a simple silhouette, or this more complicated split level shot at sunset, which I've shown before here as well. Or we can challenge ourselves to take on shark species that perhaps aren't the normal, the normal shark type. This is a draft board shark. It's not a species of shark I've ever seen before. It's in a kelp forest here in Tasmania. Really quite a cool creature. And interesting to challenge people with sort of very different creature like this, and obviously being in such a great environment, I have to try to get the environment into the shot too. This is a type of epaulet shark which, when I photographed it in 2006, hadn't yet been named by science. And I show this picture really to remind ourselves that how lucky we are as underwater photographers, that we do have the possibility, relatively frequently, to photograph species that haven't been photographed before, certainly frequently to photograph behaviours that haven't been photographed before, photograph species that are new to science. Many people in this room photographed, this is a wonderful octopus species. This only got a Latin name, I think, in 2007. Mimic octopus, I think, was named the year before, 2006. Many people in this room took pictures of both these species many years before they got their Latin names. And I think we need to remind ourselves how lucky we are. And these are actually stories that can really impress people, perhaps outside this room. So they're fun to say. This is a pair of them mating. This is the male up here on top. And just using that as a segue into sort of some of the invertebrate species. This is perhaps where our job as underwater photographers to take these images that can reach out and grab and get attention becomes a little bit harder, because we're dealing with species that have a little bit less natural charisma. Obviously, when it comes to invertebrates, cephalopods are about as charismatic as they get, so we should be able to do a pretty reasonable job, get a little bit of character in, maybe with a portrait here, taken down a babacum, or to get some behaviour in here. And I think it's important with cuttlefish. You see, I've got lots of Dutch friends on Facebook and see thousands and thousands of cuttlefish shots. They certainly have a lot more of them there than we do in the UK. But very few shots really show behaviour. There's lots of shots of cuttlefish milling around together. So, it's important when you're working with these sort of subjects to really watch the behaviour and try, as Martin Oakley would say, try and catch that peak of the action in the behaviour. Because there's too many, there's a lot of behaviour shots which are actually just two fish milling around together. It's important to really watch the behaviour, have a bit of an understanding of what's going on, and really trying to capture that peak in the action, hopefully. Carrying on through this is the final picture of cephalopods. Again, just another different way of showing one a wide-angle macro shot taken here of the sand of a tiny octopus here hiding inside a disused snail shell. There are some invertebrate species that obviously do have a nice natural charisma outside the cephalopods. This is a skeleton shrimp photographed in Iceland last week. And I think this creature here does have good natural charisma. It's a weird looking creature. He's a great colour. He happened to be posing on a really nicely coloured clean algae background. and I think he's got natural charisma. But not all creatures do. This is the Pelican cleaning shrimp. We saw one earlier. I can't zoom in on him, unfortunately. I can't the other shot too much. But nonetheless, when we have some of these less charismatic creatures, we obviously need to find ways to show them in more charismatic settings. In this case here, obviously being a cleaner shrimp, showing it in its cleaning relationship with the groupers can be quite a fun thing. Or maybe going for a super macro shot, and you all now know how big these guys are, and this is uncropped, shot with lots of teleconverters and diopters and all that sort of stuff to get down to this sort of magnification. But nonetheless, once we get down to this eye level, we can really get that personality, that eye contact going on. And obviously with bigger crustaceans like this spider crab, we can get that eye contact too. Really, going for that face shape, the eyes, getting down the eye level of the eyes and really connecting with the subject. And to make a final, I haven't got that many slides to go, but to make a final divergence from my theme, I was going to talk a little bit about the in-on endoscope lens, which is that long funny lens that I'm sure you've all seen pictures of, which I don't think is the world's greatest piece of glass by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's worth about 4 megapixels. It takes fantastic HD video because it's got about 4 megapixels of resolution, but you start trying to shoot a bit of higher resolution still, and it's not the world's sharpest piece of glass. It takes in-focus pictures, they just don't have wonderful resolution. They look fine on the projector, they just don't, I wouldn't want to print them very large. But it does offer fantastic opportunities for camera angles, because it's basically a fisheye lens on the end of a long stick, and the front of the lens is only about the size of a 2p piece. And you can slide this 2p piece, the end of this long lens, right up to your subject and sort of get this ant's eye view up towards this shore crab, or in this case here, I haven't got the colour out now. This is a leech spider crab taken on the Southsea lifeboat station on Sunday. You can really sort of open up the world of these macro critters. There's actually 2 of them here, sitting underneath this anemone. It's a picture of me looking very cold. I think I was hamming it up a bit for the picture, I'm sure. And this shows you the thing here. And I'm actually using Ken Sullivan's fibre snoot here, not as it was designed to be used, but actually using it as a way of tubing light to the front of this thing to actually provide me with a very useful lighting source. And it works really, really well with this particular thing, not to create any sort of snooting effect. And actually, I've started taking the end bits off the snoot now, just to provide a very usable light source around the front of this. So you end up with a very small front end to the system. And what I've found is, because it's a lot smaller than a lot of the critters can react to it very unusually. This was taken up in Loch Long in Scotland, and here a lot of the crabs and things would try and attack it. I think they were either trying to eat it or chase it away, but they'd really be very confident towards it, come out and belt it one or this sort of thing. This series of shots, they're a bit all over the place up in Iceland. This scorpion fish decided he wanted to eat it, so here he was eyeing it up, and he had a lunge at it here and was having another look, and then I started running away from him because it's quite scary if you're looking through this viewfinder on this massive great fish trying to eat your things. Here he was trying to eat me and chasing after me, and here actually he's biting the end of the fibre snoot. He's But you do get quite a strange reaction. And the serious side of this is it is quite a useful tool because it does offer very unusual perspectives on creatures. There's a lump sucker sitting on its nest inside a bed of kelp. But it also, because you are an extra 40 centimetres away from the creature, and the front end of your camera is very tiny, the animals do seem very tolerant of it. Okay, lump suckers are pretty tolerant anyway. But you are able to really get into the face of creatures, create unusual angles. Now, the few things I'd say about it. First of all, I don't think it has wonderful resolution. It's not bad, but I would say it's probably worth, to be honest, about sort of 6 megapixel camera. So, you could do a decent print with it, but you wouldn't want to use it for something that needed large reproduction. Obviously, a lot of the time we don't need that, and pictures of creatures in magazines tend not to be printed very big anyway. So, you don't necessarily need ultimate resolution for these sort of shots. It offers a very unique camera angle. It's excellent for video shooting because the video just looks pin sharp because of the down resing on the sensor of the SLRs. So it looks really nice on video. The one thing I would say about it is the heavily distorted look, I think, appeals to underwater photographers, much more so than it appeals to everyone else. Underwater photographers, we're used to shooting with fish eyes. We're used to very distorted looking pictures. And one thing we really love is when the subject is really close to the lens and it's really distorted, because you go, oh, he did well, he got really close, well done him. And I think we see these pictures, we go, oh wow, look how close he was, it's all distorted. And I think the rest of the world looks at them and goes, ugh, it's all distorted. Which is why you see very few fisheye shots, why very few pictures from this lens have had any sort of impact on big competitions, which are judged by non-underwater photographers, because I don't think actually these shots have that much attraction to non-underwater photographers, despite the fact they're fantastic fun to take and really, 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 really good fun, and suit a lot of subjects. This is a lemon sole. These are all up in Iceland. I've not used it in the tropics. I've only used it in cold water so far. So back on the invertebrate scale, I must get this talk finished. There are obviously some invertebrates as we get down towards the lower end, Anthony. We get some of the less exciting creatures. And we perhaps have to work a little bit harder. Obviously, in nudibranchs, we've got some interesting behaviours going on sometimes. And we've got beauty to work with as well. So if we're going for beauty, let's really show it. Let's light it beautifully. Let's have it against the black background. Let's really get that impact. Or sometimes, we have got nudibranchs that get up to some interesting behaviour, and we can show them these are some hooded nudibranchs filter feeding here underneath a kelp canopy. There are a few other invertebrate species that have a natural charisma. I think jellyfish are definitely one. You always see jellyfish doing well in underwater photography competitions. Sometimes there's other stories to tell them as well, with hitchhikers and various other things going on. But a lot of the invertebrate life we see, coral sponges, perhaps need something extra. And I think these are some of the subjects we can have some fun creatively with photography with. This is a brain coral photograph with a circular fisheye and a rotation of the camera during the exposure to create this blur. This is a total in-camera effect, not just from it, you're curious. But the mistake that people make when taking this type of shot is with their lighting. The key to shooting this type of image, I don't know if I didn't put the examples in the talk, the key to shooting this type of image is to get your strobe lighting right. Your strobe lighting is going to freeze the subject. So you want your strobes to light the coral and nothing else. If they only half light the coral will be half blurred. If they completely light the coral and half light the background, the coral will be sharp and half your background will be sharp. So you've really got to spend a lot of time getting your strobes aimed correctly at the coral, and then when you do your spin blurs everything around and the coral stays nice and sharp. So my final few slides with fish. Really, this is me coming back full circle, in that fish were always my first interest in underwater photography. It's why many of us first took pictures underwater. Yet they're one of the more challenging subjects. Obviously there's some naturally charismatic fish that are always going to photograph well. Interesting creatures, lionfish, leafy sea dragons. These are cool fish. This is a handfish, spotted handfish in Tasmania. These are cool creatures, they're always interesting. People are going to see them. But a lot of other creatures, we can help them along the way. We can work on that eye contact, really get that character showing through. A lot of these creatures, catch quirky moments with good eye contact, mouths open, funny expressions where the fish looks a bit sad. Or we can work and try and catch some behaviour, capturing moments, real moments, rather than these quirky moments that happen through photography. And there's lots of behaviours. So there's mating behaviour, there's aggregating for reproduction with schools, there's aggregating for defence. All these things can lead us to interesting images. We can also tell behaviour stories here through a sequence of pictures composited together, showing behaviour of the seahorse moving across the sea fan. Or we can show natural behaviour in straight shots. I think these are my final couple of pictures. Pair of seahorses mating and a seahorse giving birth. But for me, I think the sort of the take-home message I want you to take is yes, it's important to follow what we love doing underwater. And for me, my underwater photography started photographing coral reefs, particularly photographing coral reef life and what it got up to. And it expanded to a real interest in wide-angle photography on coral reefs. And having done this, I sort of then challenged myself to start incorporating other underwater photos into my collection. And the more of these stories I tried to tell, the more of these charismatic subjects I tried to work into my pictures, the wider the reach of my pictures had. And it's something I'd really encourage you to do. And subjects that I used to think were really boring to shoot, I think are really exciting to shoot. And I used to think that by far the most exciting place to take pictures underwater was a coral reef. And I think what's been really exciting about challenging myself is coral reefs cover just a fraction of a percent of the world's surface. And by challenging myself to take on these other stories as an underwater photographer, I'm no longer a photographer of a fraction of a percent of the world, but of 70% of the world, both in the sea and in fresh water. And I've had the opportunity to have some wonderful experiences and hopefully produce a diverse body of work that I think generates those 3 E's. It excites people, it enthuses people, and it educates people about the wonders of the underwater world. So thanks very much for listening.